Thank you so much for the kind words. It's indeed a great pleasure to be here. Okay, and starting off here, I would like to show coming from the Texas Medical Center. And it's, I think, quite impressive how it has grown in the last 75 years. So it's really fantastic to be there. So you can see how much it has evolved in a short time. And one particular institution we have at Houston Methodist, which is one of the biggest hospital systems in Houston, that we have what's called a Center for Performing Arts Medicine. And if you look at that slide here, you see that it is a synergy between arts, maybe it's research, it's a clinic, and more particularly, it's finding new ways how to benefit patients. So using the arts, or using music more specifically here, how to integrate that and how to translate that into patient care. More particularly, this particular Center Performing Arts Medicine has grown over the last 10 years, starting with 1 employee in 2012, and now it's 36 employees, and it's really focused on patient care, or more specifically here on music therapy. So this is something that is not perhaps, you know, what you find standard hospital everywhere, but due to a particular, yeah? Oh, okay. Right. Okay, thank you. Do this particular center here, we have music therapists that really are very much involved into patient care. So this is really a clinical translation of the arts of music. I would like to add that the director is, the son is actually a composer, is actually a musician, but he is actually the son of a heart surgeon. So it's a very nice synergy here to have that medicine and arts together. So the music therapists, of course, looking for guidance, are also a little bit like data to support the music therapy. And you do know that there are studies that show by having treatment or music listening of stroke subjects, that will actually help in the post-stroke treatment, stroke recovery. And here more specifically, music listening is more or less a passive task, right? So where the patient is actually encouraged or is monitored to listen to music over a certain time frame. So it could be a few months, it could be several weeks, right? And this data here from a while back, I think it's like 10 years old, from Helsinki actually shows that there is encouraging results. And that is from that back then, actually 2008, a little bit longer, where you actually see all those graphs, right? After 3-6 months from music listening, they all show upward, right? Language, visual, spatial cognition, short working memory. So this is very much a positive, encouraging result. And keep in mind, the therapy or the intervention consists in music listening. So this is nothing, well, as long as you like the music. If you don't like the music, it's maybe a little bit, you know, the music is listening is a very pleasant task. And so it's a very easy access, if we want, so to the brain or to the functionality of the brain. So more specifically, what we did, and we followed, encouraged by that study, we followed up, and what we did was to design a functional MRI paradigm. You're familiar with functional MRI, in which the patient is passively lying in the scanner, and then you play music. And here the music was interspersed by rest periods. What you see down there in the lower part of the presentation, so 30 seconds rest, 60 seconds music, 30 seconds music, and so forth and so on. So during that time, the patient was subjected to alternating rest or quiet, and was alternating to music. I'm not sure if this works here. No, we don't have sound, sorry. Okay, good. Anyway, but this is particular different kinds of music we play. And this is here what you see from the functional MRI result, where you see the bolt activation. And you see here not the simple bolt activation, but you see here a difference map. What you see in orange is a familiar piece of music that we played the subject. It's something you have a nice memory to, maybe the first dance, maybe your grandparents, something like that, right? And contrasted to that is unfamiliar music. And the unfamiliar music in this particular case was chosen as a classical piece. If you know the composer Bach, Invention No. 1, it's a very technical piece to learn the piano, more or less. And so the patient is unfamiliar with that. And then we looked at differences in functional activation, and what you see here in orange is really the larger activation due to familiar piece of the music. What you can see here also shown to the crosshair, maybe the periaqueductal gray, the midbrain, the limbic system, that area in the anterior cingulate, that for possession, if you recognize something that belongs to you. So that is higher activated than the blue areas. The blue areas, so by the classical music activated, are mostly in the parietal lobe. And the parietal lobe is, as you know, attention is trying to understand the unknown, trying to understand the music. Even also what we found very, very encouraging here, it seems to be complementary, right? So you have a part of the brain that is more concerned with the familiar portion of the music or of the memories that are associated to the music. And then you have the classical, very structured music, and the brain is trying to understand those which are different areas of the brain. So it's really more or less, right, a complementary, if you want, so activation of the brain. So the areas, the coverage of the brain areas by these two contrasting musics, the familiar and the unfamiliar, seem to be doing very well to reach quite a large portion of the brain. And that encouraged us to do a start. And here also shown here is the connectivity, functional connectivity. It's a kind of weird diagram, but it's the brain shown from the top. So the face is in the front. And what you see here is just looking through the connectivity in the brain. And there are different musical pieces we played. So there's Bach. Gagaku is a Japanese opera. Bach, again, visual, that was where we actually showed the score sheet, the self-selected music, the pleasant music. And then the last three are some certain memories. And there were 12 subjects, and you look at this connectivity pattern, just shown the connectivity pattern by the different colors showing the strength of the connectivity. And the 12 subjects in each column, you see the striking similarity of those connectivity patterns for each music, but that connectivity pattern changes with the kind of music that you play. So it really appears that you're able to manipulate the functional connectivity in the brain by changing the kind of music you play to the subject. So it's really encouraging, again, that you're able, without any drug, any interventions whatsoever, seem to able to change the functional connectivity or how the brain organizes to understand the music you're playing, based on the music, based on the maybe the kind of music, the familiarity, non-familiarity. So then what we did, we actually had stroke survivors, and this was done with 9 subjects, and we played them language, audiobooks as a control, or the music. And the music consisted of familiar and unfamiliar music. And if you do unfamiliar music, you would expect different kinds of patterns of activation. What's shown on the left, that was actually only that was just in between the trial, just in the middle, very encouraging. What you see, the language, books, audiobooks on the left side of the brain seem to enhance the functional connectivity, as you would expect. Wernicke's, Broca's area are on the left. And so consequently, you would expect that you see this. But the music is more centralized. The music is not located on the side of the brain that connects to language. So it seems to be more central. And so then after the end of the 90 days of playing music, here with these 9 subjects, what you see here in red is increased functional connectivity. What you see in blue is decreased functional connectivity. And then you just go and look through so music words. Your music is the music subject word, is the control, the audiobook. And if you look through that, you really see already visually more or less that it's more stronger activation to the music listening. So listening to music seems to have a much stronger effect on the brain connectivity than the audiobooks as a control. And then when you do a quantitative analysis, so you parcellate the brain into thalaric regions, and here shown on the left, here shown on the right, intervention group music on the top, and control group spoken words below. You can see for different thalaric regions in the brain, so presumably functionally differentiated regions, you see changes here, particularly in the intervention group and your music group. If you look, the right side of the brain is mostly always positive, right? And when you look at a control group, it's really very variable. There are certainly some areas in the right side, but not more or less the right side of the brain altogether. And then on the right diagram shown, and I apologize maybe for the colors and a little bit stranger presentation there, but you see in red higher brain connectivity, but you can actually quantify that as well. And so when we look into the total brain connectivity, you see an increase with the music, 18%, relative to the spoken word, where actually the connectivity decreased. So we find, or we conclude from our data, that this is actually very stimulating to the brain, from stroke survivors, middle cerebral artery stroke survivors, that they were actually engaged in listening to the music, and by that were able to increase their brain connectivity overall, more specifically in the right brain, control to the audiobooks. So we really think music therapy, music listening, seems to be a viable method to help recovery from stroke. With that, I would like to conclude, and thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.